Tell me a little bit. I know this is autobiographical to an extent, but tell me a little bit about how much of you we see when we see Not Fade Away.
You don't really see a lot of me. The stuff between Douglas and his father, that's kind of me and my father. But other than that, you really don't see a lot of me.
Even to the extent where you were a musician in the 60s?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were, Everybody was, to a certain extent.
Tell me then a little bit about portraying your father on screen. He's played by James Gandolfini in the film, and he has a really nice arc. There's an interesting story twist that happens with him, which we won't give away. But Douglas's father starts at a certain place and then ends up in another place. Let's just sort of put it that way. Is that sort of true of your father? Did he sort of come of age in a way in the 60s, would you say?
No, he did not. I would say not. But he, when he saw that I was serious, he became somewhat supportive. But he never liked it.
So had anyone in your family led a creative life before that?
I had a cousin John who was a commercial artist. He's the only one.
Right. And so your father, though, who ran a hardware store, is that right, in real life? Yeah, ran a hardware store in real life, would not have seen this as a viable way for you to make a living in. Was it perhaps that he didn't see it as a viable way to make a living, or was it that he just simply didn't understand it?
I think actually he was smart enough to know not to buck me on it too hard.
Right.
My mother was the one who was really opposed to it.
That's interesting. And what gave you the strength to push through that and continue on your path?
Well, I had an incident where we had this like half-ass rock and roll band, and somewhere around 1967. A bandmate of mine who was the lead guitar player, a great guitar player, and I were in a car in Greenwich Village, and I was thinking of getting married and going to California, and we were talking about the future. So I said I was thinking of going to film school. And he said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, go ahead, man, but frankly, I don't think you'll ever be anything but the drummer in my band," which filled me with determination.
Is that a moment that you replay every now and again? Did you have to, because everyone in leading creative life struggles at some point in their life. Did you play that moment over again in your head to sort of push yourself forward?
Oh, yeah, I did. It's a good question as to why it's not in the movie, but it's not. There's a version of it, but not.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you're in the movie, and you say this in the opening narration, you're looking at the band that didn't make it. Plenty of movies have been made, one of many. So many movies have been made about bands who have done extraordinarily well. Started off in the, and hit the heights. This isn't that story. So tell me a little bit about kind of calibrating the story to keep us interested in a band that we're not going to see play Woodstock at the end of the film, for instance, or something like that.
Well, that was difficult. I mean, on a very technical level, I tried to put incidents in there, which made and stakes in there for them, that made it very important. More than just like playing the music. I mean, they do. If you see the movie, they do have these incremental little rises and successes and setbacks. And a lot of people thought in the beginning when I first test screened this movie that the band became famous. They saw the same movie you did, basically, but they thought the band became famous. So I don't know. Well,
maybe that it's because the movie ends up in L.A., glamorous. I don't know. Maybe,
I don't know.
You never really know how an audience is going to react to things. I've written a number of books, and I never really, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen once I come up with a product that I'm happy with, and then you put it out, and you hope that people like it. Do you think about the I hate this. It sounds like a marketing man, but the end user. Do you think about the viewer at all, or is this just something more personal for you? That
I think I do think about the viewer. It's hard. I'm trying to picture myself writing or getting an idea, and I think I do think about the viewer. Yeah.
And
it's a method of communication. So who are you communicating with?
Right. But you can't let it become you're only...
No, you can't let that at all. What they would like or what they want, or no.
Because this movie, I think, is a fairly singular vision. I mean, I think the kind of storytelling isn't, I don't think, traditional. I don't think you would call this it's a very cinematic experience, but I don't think you would call it a traditional storytelling. And I don't want to say why really here, because I don't want to give anything away. But I do think that it's an interestingly told story, but not necessarily a traditionally told story. Would you agree?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. To me, I just sat down and wrote a story, and I didn't think it was that different. Yeah. But everybody tells me it is.
Well, I was trying to think of a way
except for the fact that, well, we shouldn't. I don't know. Yeah. We already said the man doesn't make it, right?
Which is said in the movie,
right? So yeah, right at the beginning. Yeah. Except for that, I can't think of anything else that's really like non-traditional storytelling. I think it has a first act development and a second act and a third act and all that.
As soon as I turn this off, I'll tell you just one thing that I thought varied from that. But that's you say that the 1960s formed you because it gave you an idea that things that were popular could also be art. I've read that about you, and I find that so fascinating. Yeah, I find that so fascinating because I guess it's at a moment that I was young. I don't remember so much, but I have this idea that in the 1960s, for me, what I take away from that, it's maybe the first time that young people were allowed to dictate what the art would be.
That's a good way of putting it. That is what happened.
Yeah.
That is what happened, but I think there's some very talented people like Lennon and McCartney and Jagger, Richards, and certainly Dylan. Took the raw material of older music, folk music, really, the blues and folk music, and the concerns of that, which were the concerns of grown-up human beings, poor people usually, and put that into popular music, and that deepened the music a great deal.
Well, it did, and you also, though, had blues music being taken, like then Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, people like that, all sort of throughout the decade, but they created pop music out of blues music. So maybe it was the first time that pop music had an older point of view to it, and actually talked about it.
That's exactly that's what I was trying to drive at. That is what happened. I mean, because the music that came out of the Mississippi Delta was not about, wasn't like I love my car or I love my girlfriend. No, it wasn't that.
And how did that music in the movie? And I know we've talked, it's not necessarily autobiographical, but growing up at that point, I can't imagine that being, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, any time after about 1965, that you couldn't help but be so influenced and taken with the music. I mean, you'd have to.
I'm sure there were people who didn't get into it, but now when you look back at it, everybody I meet seems to have really been fans of it. It was everything. It all came. The radio was all we had, really, and especially because TV got some of it too, but. TV was in your house. If you were out at night or out by yourself during the daytime, you listened to car radio, and that's where it all came through. There was no internet. There was no, obviously there was nothing like that, and that's where it all came from, that one source.
Well, it's interesting to me because I was talking about this earlier this morning with someone else, that back in my formative years, I'm 49, so in my formative years, really, which were more the 70s, when I first discovered punk rock, that's what was the music that really spoke to me. I grew up in a very small town. It was impossible to find this stuff. I had to either mail away or have my brother, find things for me. But it was the thrill of the chase as much as anything else, right? So maybe you growing up, randomly hearing stuff on the radio, I know that I used to sit by the radio hoping that they would play a certain song.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah,
I did too.
So now you download, and I think that takes away some of the thrill of it, and I think that's why.
Really good point.
Yeah, I think that the excitement that surrounded certainly my formative musical experiences, yours, I think that is gone now because it's too easy.
Well, I think that's really a good point. I never heard it expressed that way. I think you're right, and I will tell you that the period of music the punk that you grew up on that was important to you, the Pretenders, Elvis Costello, I assume. That was the last time I felt that way.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And was it the raw? Because it was My Aim Is True, the album I was talking about that I had to have flown in by my brother. And it changed my life. That record, I thought I never have to listen to REO Speedwagon again. So what was it about that? Was it the passion of the music? Because the passion of the music, I mean, it's still punk rock has its roots in country music, in early rock and roll, all that. And what those two have in common are passion.
Right.
And I guess that's what grabs you.
I guess that's what it is. Yeah. Which is not to say that REO Speedwagon wasn't impassioned while they were playing, but I don't know, it's all on one level. There's no complexity. There's no poetry. I don't mean there isn't any or none, but Elvis Costello is obviously a complicated artist, and that's what comes out. And so were John and Paul and George and.
And so, what are your musical experiences like today? You said that the punk music was kind of the last that sort of really moved you. Do you? I guess nobody goes to record stores anymore. Do you? Do you download?
While in L.A., I go to record. There's a record store called Amoeba. I go there.
It's the greatest record store in the world.
Yeah, it is. I go there. And what do I listen to now? The same stuff really, but I also listen to Los Lobos. I like a lot. I like White Stripes. Not a huge catalog.
Interesting, though, because those bands, Los Lobos, been around for a long time, but still have never really lost the sort of, because they came out of the punk scene. It was a different angle in, but they did. And the White Stripes, I mean, it doesn't get really and much more authentic in a big time way than them.
Right.
The film, I think one of the things that I loved, I was in basement bands. I know the way people talk to one another when you're 15, 16, 17 years old and, you want to sing the song, but the other guy is better looking, whatever it is. Was that birthed by your experience in bands?
Yeah.
Because it's really authentic.
And politics, yeah, and the backbiting, yeah. Show business.
Yeah. I guess so from that young age, I mean, is it a reflection on up to through your experience?
Yeah, I would say so. I think I first learned about show business in that garage band down in the cellar. That people, people are coming with agendas and ego and all that. It was my first foray into that.
How do you did your interactions with your bandmates in those days prepare you then for whatever battles lie ahead?
I think they did.
Yeah.
I think they did. I think I realized early on you had to really go for it. You had to, kids don't like to stand out, and they don't like to be unpleasant, and they don't like to argue with each other, and they just, or stand up for something. It's, you know what I mean? Because you can be accused of being too sincere or something. But I realized that I had to do that. You have to really do that in quote unquote show business.
Well, the worst thing would be at 15 years old to be thought of as uncool by the people around you, right?
Yeah, and to take something so seriously that you would hurt somebody's feelings would be uncool.
Yeah. And what pushed you past that? I mean, and I'm sort of belaboring the point a little bit, but I think it's really interesting that you were able to go, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to push through.
I don't know. I had a need to. I guess I had a need from where I came from, and a love for the artifact itself, like films or TV or whatever it was. I was just completely, taken away by it, and I just wanted to stick with it.
The film, I think, does a nice job of showing us all that and showing us the passion. And I want more. I want to know what happens when he takes his thumb away. Yeah, and maybe I'm not. I don't mind an ambiguous ending. I'm okay with that. But this kid, Doug's story, I don't think stops for me anymore.
Oh, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop there. Yeah. No.
Does he become the creator of a very popular television show?
I've never thought about it that much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.